Welcome again. So far we've covered till the canvas, and then we have rest of the elements to go through. We need to center the elements and so on and so forth. So let's get to that now. So if you look at the HTML file right here, there are three different div tags or block level tags, but one of those is the section tag. So there's a section tag and then there are two div tags. I already told you that these tags are containers of elements. They can hold paragraphs, like this particular div tag is holding paragraphs. They can hold headings, again here, and then canvases like here. Also they can hold images, tables, links, so on and so forth within them. Okay, so we've created an overall section tag in here that holds the entire game area. Right here it holds the entire game area, and then there is one div tag that holds the canvases and the button, these two, and then there is another div tag which has the ID rules that holds this rules area, the heading and the paragraphs. So these are the three different parts of the entire game area. As you can see here, they have separate IDs as well: game, tick and rules. Okay, so we're going to design each of these IDs. Okay, so let's for the first part, let me select the game ID, which is the overall game area. So let's go back to the CSS and then select the game ID like this. Now I need to specify the position of the element. That's going to be the first attribute of the entire game area. So I'm going to give the position property like this. This is the position. The value is going to be relative. So why relative? And what's the position? So, well, I want the element to be in a relative position to the page at all times. That's what position means. Position is basically positioning the element with respect to the page. Okay, and I've given the position to be relative because as the screen size changes, I want the element to change along with it, either in the size or the position, whatever it is, it needs to change along with the screen size, so it's not distorted. For example, the default is a fixed position, so if this screen size becomes very small, then these canvases might break apart, and then this rule area might come down, so everything might get messy. So that's why it's always better to give a relative position, especially if you want your app to work the same in a mobile device or in a smaller device as well. Alright, so that's why we mentioned position here. So next, I'm going to give the container a specific width and height in pixels as usual. So the width is going to be 640 pixels and the height is going to be 320 pixels. So as I told you, you need to mention pixels if your value is in pixels. So there is a reason behind these specific measurements, 640, 320. Why so? Well, each canvas has a width and height of 100 pixels. As you can see here, 100 pixels each. So the height entirely should be 300 pixels because there are as you can see here, there are three different rows. So altogether it would be 300 pixels, but I've added 20 pixels to the height to make it 320 pixels to allow for some margin spacing between each canvases. If I don't allow for that small 20 pixels extra, then those canvases cannot be contained inside the game area. Okay, so they'll break out. So because of that, I'm giving an extra and making it 320 pixels. Also, similarly, the width of game area, as in the canvas areas, is going to be 320 pixels because each row is going to have three canvas boxes of 100 pixels each. So overall, it's going to be 300 pixels, and I'm going to give an extra 20 pixels as usual to make it 320 pixels. But there is the rules area as well within the game area. So the rules area should also have some width, right? So for that, I'm going to add an extra 300 pixels to allow space for the rules area because the rules area is going to come right alongside the canvas area. Okay, so that's why 640 pixels in width altogether. So there we go, width of 640 and height of 320. Finally, I'm going to center the game container within the width of the page like it's done here. So I'm going to center the whole thing. So how do I do that? So I'll be using the margin property as usual to do that. So first of all, before I start, let me explain how the margins work. Okay, so margins usually take up around 4 values, and the 4 values correspond to these margins. So top margin, first one is and the second one is the right margin, the third one is the bottom margin, and the fourth and final one is the left margin, and finally you give a semicolon. So let me show you. So this is the top margin of an element. Let's take the canvases for example. This is the top margin of the canvas, this is the right margin, this is the bottom margin, and this is the left margin. So if you give 4 values to a margin property, that means you're specifying 4 different margins on all the 4 sides. So this is how the values would be distributed if you specify 4 values. If there's only one value, like we've done with the head area, then that means you've given one value for all the 4 margins. So this 50 pixels would be for all the 4 sides of an element, okay? But what if there are only 2 values? Like for example, if I give 50 pixels and then 30 pixels, right, like here, then what do they indicate? Well, the first one indicates the top and the bottom margins of an element, and the second value indicates the right and the left, okay? So that's how it works. So let me go back to the original value. So that's how margins work altogether. But in this element, I'm going to give 2 values because I want the top and the bottom margins to be 0. This is because there are no elements below this element. For example, if you look at this game area, this is the final element in here. There is nothing below this, so there's no need to separate this element with another element by giving a bottom margin. And similarly, the element on top of this is the result heading, and it already has a bottom margin as we specified in here. So this would be applied already, so we don't need to give a top margin for the game element to separate it from the results heading. So there's no need for a top or a bottom margin. So for that, we're going to give the value 0 at the start. Now for the left and the right, I'm going to set it to auto like this. So what does auto do? Well, auto actually divides the left and the right margins equally and then effectively centers an element within the width of the pages. For example, let's take this final output to explain. So here, first of all, it takes the 2 left and right margins and it divides it equally. So when it does that, the element automatically comes to the center because the left and the right margins are equal. Okay, so that's what happens. So the margin is 0 and auto. Let us save this and go and take a look at our live preview. Great, see? Now everything is in the center. The only problem is the new game element is not within this particular area and the rules is not in here like it is in here. So we can correct that in the next few lessons. Alright, so I'll see you there.